Morning Glory America, Bunker High Canada. I'm Hugh Hewitt inside the Beltway. The military briefing out of the Ukrainian war, Russia's invasion of Ukraine this morning, is that the battle for Ukraine has just become a siege warfare on its cities. Russia increasingly relying on missiles and artillery bombing the cities of Ukraine to destroy all that is left of the civilian resistance. Russian attacks on Kiev, Odessa, and other locations across the Ukraine as Moscow appears to be shifting its battle plan to compel Ukraine to relinquish claims on its southeastern and eastern territory. The people of Mariupol hang on. I don't know how, but they hang on. They refuse to lay down their arms. Surrender or suffer was Russia's ultimatum, and Mariupol has chosen suffering. Its 300,000 remaining citizens are trapped, as the name that's most like to join that of Guernica, Stalingrad, Grozny, Aleppo, as literally it's being leveled. That's all Putin knows. The Wall Street Journal headline is Russian strikes take toll on Ukrainian cities. I don't think that really adequately communicates what one sees if you study the news at all, how wide and vast. If you can imagine, I'm inside the Beltway, the 3/4 of the city laid waste, rubble in the streets, people having fled. They're living in the subways there. President Biden has warned that Russia could resort to chemical weapons. Now, I'm not really sure what that's based on, but if they do, Europe is debating right now cutting off all of Russia's oil like we have done. There is support in the EU, according to the Wall Street Journal, for a complete Russian oil ban. One whiff of chemical weapon. It's bad enough to just destroy thousands of women and children with random artillery attacks on schools and hospitals. But if the butcher of the Kremlin goes in for chemical weapons, you can expect the world just to say no to Russian oil. Russia is sending, quote, low-quality replacement troops to the front lines, according to a U.S. think tank, which is the Institute for the Study of War. Low-quality Russian troops. Given what we've seen for 3 weeks, what do you think that means? We're going to be down to the Hitler Youth Brigades showing up with 14-year-olds around the Battle of Berlin if Russia... they don't have a large standing army. They got a lot of nuclear weapons. They do. You can't go to war with Russia because they have a nuclear arsenal. They have hypersonic missiles, which they're using up. They may be out of regular missiles, but they do have chemical weapons. If they use that, wow. President Biden criticized India yesterday, proving once again that he's not really a very good president to have in wartime because he says things that upset our colleagues and our friends in the world. Russia has halted the World War II peace talks over the Japanese islands it occupied. Now, Japan's actually upset about that, but I don't know that we can really be surprised that they're not going to pretend to have peace talks with anyone while Putin's in charge. Moscow airport has furloughed 1 out of 5 people as flight numbers drop and sanctions bite. I hope they're all unemployed soon. I don't wish this on the Russian people, but that's the only way to get Putin to give up. Vladimir Putin's super yacht faces seizure from an Italian marina. I'm all for that. It's a $500 million boat. It's in dry dock in Italy, and they've been trying to figure out who it belongs to. It looks like it's Putin's. Biden also warned CEOs in the United States yesterday that he went to the business roundtable, not sure he knew where he was. Here's what he had to say, cut number 1.
But look, today my administration is issuing new warnings that based on evolving intelligence, Russia may be planning a cyber attack against us. And as I said, the magnitude of Russia's cyber capacity is fairly consequential, and it's coming. The federal government is doing its part to get ready. But under U.S. law, as you all remember, the private sector, all of you, largely decides the protections that you will or will not take.
All right, so he's just reading. The prompter has given him so much trouble, they've given him the large type paper, and so it's a really desultory speech, but obviously he's tipping off that our intel community has picked up that Fozzie Bear, whatever they call that thing, Fuzzy Bear, is going to start attacking American businesses soon. Hong Kong has suspended trading in the shares of Evergrande. Welcome to 2008, China. They're about to experience the liquidity crisis that hit so many American and international companies in 2008 when President Bush was president. And when Evergrande tumbles to the ground and takes all the debt with it, there's going to be a lot of dominoes falling in China, already under stress because of fears of this. It's going to be a reality now. How big tech lost the antitrust battle in Europe? Good. It hasn't, but good. Jerome Powell said he's going to be more aggressive as he raises interest rates. More on that coming up. Fury Road, how soaring fuel prices are causing chaos in Britain. Headline from the Telegraph, which I said, wait until you see California gas prices, Californians. The U.S. vaccination rate has stalled at about 65%. And the reason for that is nobody gets a coherent message out of Tony Fauci and the CDC, and they overcomplicate everything. They ought to be telling people right now, if you're over 65, you'd like to give the fourth booster, go a fourth shot, a second booster, go get it. But they can't because they're the CDC and they're the most incompetent group of communicators in the world. And we got to study more. Nobody's listening to them now. Nobody. The credibility of the CDC has crashed and burned. COVID infection associated with a greater likelihood of type B diabetes, according to a review of patient records. This is in the Washington Post, but it doesn't tell you how much of a correlation. Saudi Arabia says it can't be blamed for the price of oil when its facilities are under Houthi attack. That's the Iranian proxy that Team Biden empowered this year, and they just keep bombing Saudi Arabian oil facilities, so the price of oil is going up. Eric Greitens should never get anywhere near the Republican nomination for Senate. His ex-wife has detailed his record of domestic abuse in court, hitting kids, hitting her, breaking the tooth out of kids' heads. He's a bad guy. I told you that. Do not vote for Eric Greitens. Don't be fooled. He's paying a lot of people to say nice things about him. He's a terrible candidate in Missouri. We will lose that seat. Republicans will not vote for a wife beater, and that's who he is. Democrats won't either. No one was going to vote for someone who beats up their kids. And Eric Greitens has been accused of that in court by his wife, former wife. When we come back, finally, you will learn my position on daylight savings time. I've held it back just to tease you. A lot coming up today, including more Bill Barr from yesterday, if you missed some of that. The Judge Brown Jackson hearings are underway, and they're not going to be very interesting. She's not going to answer any questions. She's going to be confirmed. There is no drama. Let's stay focused on the news because this is the Hugh Hewitt Show. That's the rundown. Morning Glory, America. Bonjour, hi, Canada. Hugh Hewitt live inside the Beltway. I'll be on special report tonight with Brett Baer on the panel. If you're watching Fox News, you will see my next guest, General Jack Keane. Retired four-star Army general, is also the chairman of the Institute for the Study of War. He is a Fox News senior strategic analyst, and I always stop whatever I'm doing whenever General Keane comes on and listen. Good morning, General. Great to have you on.
Yeah, good morning, you. Wonderful to be here with you and your audience.
Thank you. I saw yesterday that the Institute for the Study of War released a report showing that Russia is sending low-quality reserves to Ukraine from their eastern military district. What should the public understand about the significance of that, General?
Well, first of all, I mean, it's an indicator of the problem that they certainly have in Ukraine with the forces they have already deployed there. They've taken considerably higher casualties than they expected. And in addition to that, the performance of their ground forces just hasn't even measured up. I mean, there's obvious indications of low morale. One of the significant indicators of that, is the fact that they're not recovering their dead. And I don't know anything that would make their forces actually have problems performing than that indicator. The other thing is there's a number of combat refusals going on. One of the reasons why there are reported deaths among generals and regimental commanders who would be at the colonel level is because of the combat refusals that's taken place inside their ranks, and the fact that these leaders have to get down on the ground and force them into combat is part of what has taken place. And so the the low-level reserves who are not well trained as an indication of just how significant the problems are that the deployed force in Ukraine is certainly having. They're also calling up a number of youngsters, conscripted youngsters in Russia, and many young people are just fleeing throughout Europe because they want to avoid the conscription. And if they're going to put them into the fight as well with very little training, they're going to become nothing more than cannon fodder, and it gives you a sense of how desperate they are.
Now, General, if you look at the map and we see the four axes of invasion, and it struck you, I think, on the first night of the war, you said 4 axes of invasion. This is unusual, and you were implying kind of nuts. What do you make of the evaluation of the Russia war plan 3 weeks and a half into it?
Yeah, it is what we said at the beginning. It was far too ambitious and much too complicated. To attack on 4 independent axes, neither one of them supporting each other, requires each axis to have significant logistical infrastructure to sustain it, and also to have air power to support it. And that absolutely puts a huge strain on your logistics and also on your air power. And Russia's not used to conducting any kind of a campaign of this scale. 2008, Georgia, a modest campaign, well documented, lots of problems they had. 2014, annexing Crimea, no fighting. Eastern Ukraine, yes, fighting, and they admitted then that they had a number of problems and were not able to take all the territory that they wanted. And those 2 events were very modest by comparison to this, and they really underestimated their ability to execute a complicated plan like that. I blame the generals for putting together something like that and then not actually adjusting. One of the great things about the American military, we know a plan lasts as long as you make contact with the enemy, and then you have to make adjustments and call audibles. And we've done that time and time again. They just do not have that kind of operational flexibility and intellectual adaptability. They're very similar, watching them perform, that the Soviets were. Centralized leadership, not delegating to subordinates and let the subordinates figure out what to do based on the situation in front of them. An incredible commitment to a plan that's not working because of that centralized leadership. Yeah,
that doubling down, General, let me ask you about the General Zhukov tactics that we see. If they only have 150,000 crackerjack troops, and that's what a former senior Trump administration official told me, he said, look, Putin's really only got 150,000 real soldiers. The rest are conscripts and they don't know what to do. Has he already lost the ability to win this war? He might be able to destroy cities, but has he lost the ability to subdue the countryside in the way that we eventually subdued Iraq and the areas in the first part of the Afghan war that we were successful in?
Yeah, he's lost. I mean, what we believe at the Institute for the Study of War, that is his initial political objective and why he was conducting the military campaign to accomplish that objective was to topple the regime and change out to a pro-Russian Ukrainian government. And that's not going to happen. He's failed at that mission. So that initial mission is not there. Now, he may find himself accepting something less than that. Territorial control in the south and the east, cutting off Ukraine from the Sea of Azov certainly would be an accomplishment by them. Opening up the land bridge from eastern Ukraine to Crimea. They're on the verge of achieving that once they take Mariupol. But that's a far cry from what he had intended, and there's no indication either that Zelensky and the Ukrainian leadership would agree to that. So I think we're in for a struggle here for some time.
Has there been any indication, General, of an organized Ukrainian counterattack? I really don't know what your opinion of the Ukrainian high command is. They are certainly holding on and fighting bravely, but do they have the ability to organize any kind of strategic counterattack to separate one column from another or further drive the Russians backwards?
What they've been able to do is limited tactical counterattacks. They've taken a number of suburban towns outside of Kyiv. And interesting enough, they attacked the Russians also at night, and Ukrainians have night vision goggles and other thermal imagery, and we're absolutely stunned based on anecdotal reports from the Ukrainians. They don't believe the Russians have theirs, and yet the Russians have advertised that they're a night fighting organization, and that certainly is not the case. Now, in terms of a major counteroffensive as opposed to a limited counterattack, I don't believe the Ukrainians have that capability.
Okay. Now, do they have the capability to attack the Black Sea maritime assets that Putin has been using to bombard from the sea, Mariupol and other parts of the southern coast?
They do not, because they don't have anti-ship missiles, which is something they've requested from us, and we have not given them. For the life of me, I do not understand it. What a blow it would have been. I mean, they offloaded 2 amphibious ships worth of Naval Infantry Brigade, the 810th Naval Infantry Brigade, their best one they have in their arsenal, to help in the siege of Mariupol. And they could have blasted those 2 ships, and what a blow that would have been in being able to stop that offensive that they're conducting at Mariupol. It doesn't make any sense. The Biden administration has never had this right, Hugh. I mean, they've been selective about providing weapons to the Ukrainians. They get it in their head that some weapons are offensive and some are defensive. Look at Russia invades Ukraine. Every weapon that the Ukrainians are using is a defensive weapon at that point. Everything.
Right.
Air power, missiles, tanks, it doesn't make any difference. Anti-ship weapons, all defensive. And for some reason, they've absolutely misconstrued this, and they keep being afraid and paralyzed by the fear of escalation, even over selected weapon systems like what I just discussed, harpoons, or the MiGs. It makes no sense. And it weakens NATO's position as a result of it.
So, General, what should we be looking at? We got about 2 minutes left. What do you think we should be watching for as an indication that Putin may be about to give up the ghost and realize that his sunk costs are his sunk costs? He's got to cut and run.
I think we're a far cry from that. I think he's determined, based on what I see outside of Kyiv. He's dug in his artillery, dug in his mechanized units. They're not leaving. They can't take Kyiv, but they're not leaving either. I do think what we got to keep an eye on is if and when Mariupol falls, will they be able to take that success that they've had there in the east and the south and use some of those forces to go west to take Odessa and also to go north to assist with the siege of Kyiv? Our assessment at ISW is that based on the casualties, they will not be able to generate that kind of combat momentum. In other words, their casualties that they've had in this fight in the south around Mariupol.
I hope you are right, General. I keep reading everything ISW puts out, and I appreciate your joining me this morning. Please keep coming back. See you on Fox soon. The Senior Strategic Analyst for Fox News, General Jack Keane from the Institute for the Study of War, retired 4-star Army general and probably the smartest guy on TV talking about the Ukraine-Russian war. Don't go anywhere. I'm Hugh Hewitt. Stay tuned to America. Morning, Glory America. Bonjour. Hi, Canada. Hugh Hewitt back inside the Beltway. The confirmation hearings of Judge Brown Jackson to become an Associate Justice of the United States Supreme Court continue today before the Senate Judiciary Committee. A member of that committee, Senator Marsha Blackburn of Tennessee, joins me now. Good morning, Senator. Welcome back.
Good morning. It's good to be with you.
How do you think of what do you think of the first day of the hearings, and what do you expect today?
The first day was opening statements, and for me, it was an opportunity to lay out what I plan to discuss with her today. So that is what I did. I want to talk with her more about some questions she left unanswered when she came before us for her appellate hearing. I couldn't get a straight answer from her about how she felt about court packing or what was her judicial philosophy. As I've been through her writings and her speeches and opinions, I have found that she made a statement where she felt like judges had personal hidden agendas. So I'm going to discuss that with her. I also want to know where she is on parental rights and on CRT, which she's been on a school board that has supported progressive education in CRT, even had a curriculum called Woke Kindergarten and a class for parents, as they did on white privilege. And with transgender and biological males competing against females, parental rights are vitally important.
You know, there's a brand new documentary out, Senator, called Whose Children Are They? It's available at salemnow.com. I would recommend it to everyone. And in former Attorney General Barr's brand new book, One Damn Thing After Another, he actually puts forward the argument that not only do we have to worry about the free exercise of parents' religious rights when they confront anti-religion propositions such as gender fluidity, and that does conflict, for example, with Catholicism and most mainstream Protestant denominations. We have to worry about the Establishment Clause being violated by the creation of a hard left progressivism in the schools. I think you're alluding to that. Are you going to ask her if there's an establishment worry on her part that the schools are becoming secular absolutist, and that's a theological attachment?
We are going to work with her on some questions pertaining to her participation on the board, the beliefs of the board, her how she has approached that. I'm also going to deal with her on some of these issues where she's been soft on crime. Very concerned about her work for some of the Gitmo detainees, very concerned about her approach and her statement that she would have allowed 1,500 criminals to be removed from federal custody during COVID-19.
How long do you have, Senator, in terms of questioning time?
Today I'm going to have 30 minutes, and tomorrow I'll have 20 minutes.
All right. In your 30 minutes today, I hope you ask her if the Establishment Clause is implicated by CRT. That's it. I would just like to hear, is the Establishment Clause implicated by CRT in any public school? Because I do believe Barr makes the case that we have to get CRT out of the schools, and the best way to do it is by arguing that it is, in effect, a violation of the Establishment Clause. Can you add that to your list of many questions, Senator?
I will add that to the list, Hugh, because we're very concerned about CRT being used in the school. She also had listed CRT as one of the considerations that a judge should give when they're making their decision. And that, coupled with judicial philosophy, not being able to define a judicial philosophy, that being coupled with her participation on the board, that it has been very supportive of progressive education, this infusion of CRT into, how do you separate that when you get into mandating certain things have to be brought forward. It's part of the concern for us.
Senator, Democrats hate when we talk about CRT because they know parents hate it. They absolutely hate it. They hate transgenderism being pushed upon elementary school kids. They hate this climate alarmism being pushed on elementary school kids. They hate indoctrination, which is what Bill Barr talks about. And this is not an attack on Judge Brown Jackson. She's going to be confirmed. I just want to know if she's open to getting this out of the school by virtue of constitutional dictate, because it is violating the Establishment Clause.
And one of the things we have to realize is these are lifetime appointments. And as we have talked with her, she doesn't go up for election. She doesn't face the public. Once she is there, she is there. And when I've talked with her, she has talked about not looking necessarily at the Constitution first. When I say, what is your judicial philosophy? And she talks to me about how she approaches and process, not her philosophy. This is of concern to me because she will be setting precedent. And Hugh, as you know, so many of these federal judges have a tendency to look at current events and look at precedent and then think in terms of a living moldable, changing Constitution rather than the text of the Constitution as written.
You know, Senator, if you spend all 30 minutes today and all 20 minutes tomorrow talking about CRT, you will have done a great service to the country because, and let her talk a lot. The more that she's going to be confirmed. Leader McConnell said on the show last week, it's very highly likely she'll be confirmed with a few Republican votes, and that's fine. I think the over-under 65. But I would like to hear her before she goes on to the bench talk about the Establishment Clause, the Free Exercise Clause, and critical race theory, as well as climate alarmism, because she's going to be ruling a lot on people's religious rights, right? The city of Philadelphia wanted to throw the Catholic Church out of adoption services because of this ideology of the left, and the court struck that down, and they will continue to strike it down. But I hope she is open. I know she's a Christian. I know she's a believer. I hope she is open to the argument that public schools are just trampling on parental rights.
Well, they are trampling on parental rights. And, you know, if you want to view it from Establishment Clause, yes, you know, that is a valid consideration. The practical application of this is that we have parents every single day that come to us and say, you won't believe what is being taught to my kids. You won't believe what I have found out about the school system. This is why they're showing up. This is why, whether it is Virginia or San Francisco, people are tossing out these school board members that will not focus on teaching kids our history, civics, respecting difference of opinion. And Hugh, as you well know, this nation, our freedom, our liberty has been kept strong because we believe in robust, respectful political debate. And that is something that needs to continue. If you have CRT taught and people are taught to cancel out anybody that does not agree with them, and what you have to support is CRT and believing that this nation is a bad nation, then there is no room for a counterpoint for children to learn about the goodness of this nation.
You know, the more that Judge Brown Jackson talks about CRT, the better. And you're doing a great job, Senator Blackburn. Please keep coming back, and I wish you good luck today. More questions, longer answers from her. I'm going to say the same thing to John Cornyn. I appreciate your time, Senator.
You got it. Take care.
Thank you. I do. I think that if every Republican focuses on CRT and on Bill Barr's argument that CRT has become a state-sponsored religion, an establishment of religion, and we have to declare it unconstitutional, that's a home run for her. She's going to be confirmed. Let's see if we can't persuade her before she goes through a lifetime appointment. Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt inside the Beltway, joined by United States Senator John Cornyn of Texas. Good morning, Senator. How are you?
Good morning, Hugh. I'm doing great.
Now, you are headed to Poland and Germany on a CODEL. I assume that's after the Judge Brown Jackson hearings are complete. And I'll come back to Judge Brown Jackson. What do you hope to get done in Poland and in Germany?
Well, obviously, the invasion of Ukraine has changed everything, including the Germans' approach to collective security under NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. But obviously, Ukraine's not a member, but they're right next door, and there's a humanitarian crisis going on. And the Poles are doing, and other countries in Europe are doing a wonderful job taking in the Ukrainians who have nowhere else to go, while the fighting-age men are heading back the other way to try to defeat the Russians. So, you know, this is unfortunately the grim reality, Hugh, is while the Ukrainians have done incredible work defending their country using the weapons that the West has supplied, the time is in Putin's favor, because he can just continue to grind this down in a war of attrition.
You know, Senator, I had General Jack Keane on earlier. He said the great disaster, as far as we did not give them Harpoon missiles with which to oppose the sea attacks and the landings on the south coast near and around Mariupol, which holds out. But are we getting them Harpoon missiles now?
Well, I don't know specifically about Harpoon missiles. We're asking them what they need and what they can use, and while there is now a steady flow of weapons into the country, there are new requests for different types of weapons for different circumstances. Like, for example, the S-300 anti-aircraft system that they are now using to shoot down Russian jets. The problem is the Russians are using standoff weapons in Russian territory and not even flying into Ukraine because it's too dangerous for them to do so. But my approach to this is, Hugh, we should give them anything they want, anything they can use.
Well, I hope when you come back, you'll call us and update us on the situation. We're raising money for Food for the Poor, which is feeding the 10 million refugees in Ukraine, and that's at the top of HughHewitt.com. I thank all the audience who are contributing. If I can, Senator, turn to Judge Brown Jackson. I had Attorney General Barr on yesterday, the former Attorney General's brand new book, One Damn Thing After Another, will endlessly entertain and amuse and inform you. But there is one long segment in it, which I think bears bringing up with Judge Brown Jackson. General Barr makes the argument that critical race theory and its coordinate attacks of ideology in the classroom, transgenderism and climate alarmism, that they've become a state-sponsored religion of the left, and that as a result, the Establishment Clause comes into play. Will you be talking to Judge Brown Jackson about whether or not the Establishment Clause would actually operate against the curriculum of the left, which is now infiltrating the schools?
Well, it's a wonderful idea. I just happened to have finished General Barr's book, and it's a magnificent book, very entertaining, as you said, but very substantive, too. I'll be talking to Judge Jackson about substantive due process, which, as you know, is judge-made law.
Right.
That doesn't involve any enumerated rights in the Constitution, but which has been the subject of much ballyhooed cases on the left and cases on the right, like Lochner, where basically the court is making policy. So I'm sure we can find time to weave in a question about progressives' secular religion known as critical race theory.
Yeah, if the question is simply, is it possible that public school curriculum anchored in CRT can violate the Establishment Clause, I think that answer will go around the world. She'll probably say no. Yeah. She might avoid it, but it's an idea that we've got to get into the public mainstream, that it's indoctrination is what General Barr said. And right. That's what the Establishment Clause is to prevent, indoctrination of children.
Well, Hugh, by default, that's all that's left. I mean, if you can't talk about religious beliefs in school, what is left? Well, it's secularism, and you can talk about violence, sex, misogyny, you name it, but you can't talk about your faith, and they've got it upside down as far as I'm concerned.
We have a new picture out over at salemnow.com. Whose children are they? And it's about imposing upon young children idea sets that are anathema to their parents. And one of those is gender fluidity. And it's not science. It is currently a hot topic among educators. But these educators are the same one that told us science required masks. I just hope that you let her talk a long time. I'm doing the wrong thing right now. I'm not letting you talk. I'm talking. But, the key thing at these hearings is the judges never talk. And as a result, we don't get a record of what they think. Did the Republicans restrain themselves yesterday, in your view, Senator?
Yeah, that's the problem. I think, unfortunately, these nominees are overcoached, both on the right and the left. I mean, we get questions about, is Brown versus Board of Education still good law? And we've had nominees refuse to answer the question, which to me is just crazy. But then, the people, you don't fail to get confirmed by not answering questions, which is unfortunate. So we're going to press the judge. I mean, she wouldn't talk about her judicial philosophy or how she approaches decision-making as a judge as opposed to a legislator, and that's going to be the area that I'm going to press her on today. So we'll see what happens.
I believe that Judge Brown Jackson was a member of a private school board. Am I right about that?
I think that's right. I know she's on the board of Harvard overseers, and we might ask her a little bit about some of the litigation by Asian Americans claiming discrimination in the admissions policy of Harvard, whether she intends to recuse herself or not.
Is she going to resign from the board of Harvard? I mean, she's got to.
Well,
You can't. Harvard has got conflicts everywhere because of their endowment. They are involved in every case. They have a $30 billion endowment. This is my alma mater, so you can't be on the board of overseers if you're on the Supreme Court.
Well, I've given the chance. I'll ask her about that.
Well, does that appear intuitive to you when you've got a $30 billion endowment? Isn't it going to go everywhere?
Yeah, good point.
Well, that's what I'm here for. I'm here to help the senators get ready for the hearing. But, Senator, tell me, she will be confirmed. Leader McConnell said last week, it's very highly likely she's going to be confirmed with some Republican votes. Do you agree with that assessment?
I do. But I still think this whole process, first of all, it's our constitutional obligation to provide advice and consent on nominations, so it's not irrelevant. And I think this is a potentially a teachable moment. There's not many times when the nation's attention is riveted on the separation of powers and on the distinctive role of judges as opposed to that of legislators. And I think it's a conversation worth having. And if we can help people better understand how our Constitution and our republic is supposed to function, that's a positive.
I agree. In fact, if she was on the board of a Christian school, I would like to hear her describe her views on whether or not the Gospels are true. Does she believe that? And I don't know that if you're serving on a Christian school and there's a statement of purpose, I don't know that she's going to say no, but I'd also like to know if they teach gender fluidity at her school and if they teach CRT at her school.
Well, it might also be interesting to see what she thinks about the Establishment Clause and the freedom of conscience in the First Amendment, and whether they would be obligated to hire people who don't agree with their religious doctrine or other beliefs. So that's another area of potential questioning.
You know, the book by General Barr, and since you've read it, I'll ask you about it. It seems to me to be the most comprehensive case for constitutionalism that I've read between two covers. Did you come away with that view that, my gosh, we were lucky to have him? I hope he comes back.
I don't know if he'll come back for a third time. I'm a big admirer of Bill Barr. He's a true patriot. He didn't need to come back and undergo all the criticism and attacks that he endured, but he believed it was important to restore the Department of Justice to a nonpartisan place where the law is respected and honored rather than politics. And he's a smart guy with broad experience, and I found a lot of the different things that he wrote about in the book very instructive, and actually talked to my staff. I said, well, let's dig a little deeper, for example, in some of his ideas about how to deal with big tech. Obviously working for some of the major telecommunications companies, he's had a lot of experience with the regulatory state, and I found a lot of his ideas pretty provocative, and we're going to follow up on them.
Oh, very much. You know, his argument that the concentration of power in the hands of a few companies actually makes them subject to First Amendment restraint because they become a de facto government. That would be interesting to ask Justice Brown Jackson about as well. But going back to Poland and Ukraine, when you get to Poland, are you going to ask them if they are not getting anything that we promised them? Because I really want to know if they're expecting delivery of something that we haven't given them.
I think that the constant message we're getting is we need more and we need it faster. So I think there's a broad bipartisan consensus that we should be providing all of the lethal defensive weapons that they can use, as well as the humanitarian aid that they need. But as you know, the federal government's not known for its efficiency or its speed. So we keep pressing on this end to get them both of those things.
Who is going with you on the Codel, Senator Cornyn?
Well, there were 10 of us. It was 5 Republicans and 5 Democrats. Senator Joni Ernst led our effort, and to me, it demonstrated our concern and our commitment. And I'm glad the president's going to Brussels to talk to our NATO allies later. I guess it's this week. And the problem is time is on Putin's side, and he's the one who's, unless we do something differently, he's the one who's going to decide how and when this ends, and that causes me a lot of concern.
Last question. When you were over there, you saw a lot of refugees. I'm sure you saw a lot of refugees. Many of the EU countries have opened their arms. Has the United States indicated how many Ukrainian refugees they will accept on a temporary basis?
Well, they have not, to my knowledge. Part of the challenge, Hugh, is that the politics in Europe with regard to refugees is a little fraught because of what happened with the Syrian civil war. I think Germany alone took in about 1 million refugees, and so they've already had a lot of challenges associated with the displacement of people both in country and out of country. So this is like I said, a humanitarian crisis that we all need to figure out how to pitch in on.
Thank you, Senator. And again, I'm working the refs, CRT and the Establishment Clause. When do the two cross? Thank you, Senator. Be well. I love working the refs. I don't get to ask the questions. I just get to suggest. Is it possible for CRT to become an Establishment Clause violation, Judge? Is it possible for public school curriculum to go so far into secular absolutism that it becomes an Establishment Clause problem? I'd love to hear it. And it's a short question, right? Also, I'm Hugh Hewitt. I'll be on with Brett Baer this afternoon or evening on Special Report. I hope you will tune in at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. in the West. Joined now by Hotline Josh Kraushaar with National Journal. Josh, I'm sure you're following Judge Brown Jackson's hearings. There is no doubt in my mind she'll be confirmed. And John Cornyn just said that. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, and I think she's done quite well so far in her, introductory statement to the committee yesterday. I think Democrats have handled the nomination as well as can be expected so far. And look, I think there are going to be a few Republicans, at least Susan Collins, I think is likely to support her. I wouldn't be surprised to see a couple more Republican senators if the hearings and if her testimony and the committee hearings today and tomorrow go well.
I expect actually more than a few, but I could be wrong. I put the over-under at 65. I don't see any reason to vote against her. I would like to hear her talk about critical race theory, gender fluidity, and the Establishment Clause, because Attorney General Barr was on the show yesterday making an argument from his new memoir, One Damn Thing After Another, that progressivism has become a religion for people. Any chance that kind of theoretical debate enters into the conversation today?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think affirmative action, education, racial issues are going to be part of some senators' questioning. Josh Hawley, probably the senator that comes to mind in pressing some of those issues. But I was, Hugh, I was struck that you didn't hear a lot of those types of arguments or that type of theme in her comments. In fact, she's been talking mostly about the American dream. She didn't use the word equity when she's been in her introductory statements or when she was introduced by President Biden. You've actually seen sort of a shift in Democratic thinking on some of these issues, and they understand how politically problematic that, critical race theory is, or trying to, say that, there should be quotas or all kinds of proposals that have come from the far left. And I think that her hearing and what she said in introducing herself is as clear evidence as possible that she's not going to be kind of caught in that trap, and in her own story is frankly a refutation of some of the more
I don't think Republicans are trying to trap her. I just want her to talk about CRT and whether or not it becomes a religion at some point. John Cornyn just told me, I did not know this, that she's on the Harvard Board of Overseers. Josh, she's got to get off the Harvard Board of Overseers. It's got a $30 billion endowment. It's got more conflicts than anything other than big tech company. I mean, if she was on the board of Google, she'd have to step down, right?
Yeah, well, one thing that I think is going to come up in the hearing is whether she'll recuse herself in the upcoming affirmative action case with the Ivies over their admissions policies. So that's going to be one question. I mean, I think affirmative action, quotas in universities and higher education, that is going to be a theme I would expect from Republicans in this hearing.
Well, I think recusal is one issue. I think she has to resign from the Harvard Board of Overseers simply because There isn't any issue that goes before the court that doesn't impact Harvard in some way, because Harvard is so big. $30 billion endowment, Josh. It's not something you can avoid. It's not, a little tiny college in Eureka where, Ronald Reagan went. Or, I mean, you can be on a small college and avoid conflicts. You can't be on the Harvard board and avoid them.
Yeah, I mean, that does sound like something of a conflict given how prominent the issues of higher education and their admissions policies are going to be in the coming court sessions. So, yeah, I mean, I would imagine that would come up. I haven't heard that from Republican lawmakers and staff members, but that's certainly something I could see coming up.
They never talk to me about this stuff. It's too bad. Let me turn to Eric Greitens. I'm sure you saw the filing yesterday by his wife accusing him of domestic violence, of hitting his kids. Is he going to get out, Josh? I mean, this guy is going to lose that seat if he gets the nomination. I can't even imagine him getting. I don't know who would vote for him.
Can't we get him to play for the Browns?
Stop.
Yeah, he's as toxic a candidate as you can possibly imagine. But he is leading largely because of his name ID, largely because people remember him when he was disgraced governor of the state of Missouri. But that latent name identification has allowed him to lead in polls, and he's the more concerning for Republican senators is that he's been courting Trump world. He's been courting the former president and some of his allies.
Well, he's paying Trump world. He's paying a bunch of consultants who are close to the president, and so he's buying their support. But the deal is, you can't nominate someone who abused their spouse and hit their kids. You just can't do that. They'll get. It's wrong, right? Don't people realize that?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty black and white, and I don't expect him to ultimately win the nomination. It raises some questions, though, about another Republican candidate who's likely going to be the nominee, and Herschel Walker in Georgia, who has acknowledged some of these messy incidents in his past. So, I mean, this is an issue where they're clearly going to do everything possible to get Greitens out. He's not going to drop out, but I think they're going to try to marginalize him as much as possible.
I think he might drop out. Josh, I think he might actually drop out. When you have to talk about domestic violence every single day, because the filing is current, and you hit your kids, I think Eric Greitens has to drop out. And people who endorse him now, and they're endorsing domestic violence, and not old charges from long ago, but I mean new filings. Hotline Josh on Twitter. Thank you, Josh. Thank you, Dwayne. Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Harley. And good luck, Ben. We're still waiting on that baby. By tomorrow, we hope we have one for you. We'll give you the news on the next Hugh Hewitt Show.